Welcome back, our solutionaries, our forward thinking, highly conscious audience. We are so grateful that you join us on Mondays and so grateful that you're patient through our evolution of guests, our evolution of consciousness, the various thought forms that we keep bringing to you to consider. Is this part of what you consider to be your personal solution? As you hear from social media, as you hear from mainstream media, as you listen to your neighbors and your spouse, what are the current crises, the problems, the challenges that we're all dealing with that we consider to be near and dear to heart, but maybe also a societal challenge, a global challenge, maybe a cosmic challenge, because we've certainly touched quite heavily on consciousness. We have to keep spiraling back to determine, are we actually bringing you content? Are we joining and having you join us as we meet with our guests to bring about what we believe are solutions, truly solutionary and evolutionary concepts that can make the biggest difference in the world? And as you are patiently watching the lead in before I come on to the show, you'll notice that there were some choices in some of the images that I think represent what it is that I wanted to bring to you as the founder of creation and building this community. It shows someone meditating and being internal and reflective in their awareness and in the way that they interact in the world. Children that are working and cooperatively together in the arts and doing that in a way that again brings more music, more life, and joy to our world. Tiny homes to give us ideas that we need more stuff because we really don't need more stuff, people. Do we need some things in the material world? We do, but do we need more acquisition? Is that really what defines us and what brings us the greatest amount of joy? Growing our own food and eating things that are healthy, that are colorful and filled with life. These were very decisive images that were created building up to the introduction to Solutionary TV and Waking Up with Us. And tonight we are returning back to some solutionary grassroots, really at a grassroots place, and welcoming Dail Croome, who has been with us before as one of the founders, well, the father of the band Daring Greatly. And I know that he's more than that, so much more than that, because he and I have had many discussions about what does it take not only to groom our children, in his case, young men, groom them to be artists in a world where our young people are told to sell out for the dollar and stay true to their consciousness, to their morality, to their sense of beauty and art. And they did a gorgeous job of being with us about a year ago. And I've decided to welcome Dail back because on the heels of a video and a movement that he is a part of that's called Conscious Capital, there's a great video that can be found on YouTube that he just kind of walked through each of the systems that we have all come to take for granted and assume are the only ways for us to interact in the world, that we've got to conform, that we've got to buy in. And as solutionaries, we know better. So help me welcome Dail Croome. Let's hear more about it. Dail, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I just want to, before we go into the playful Q&A that you and I are really excited about, and I know that will help our audience better understand how deeply you're willing to go with conscious capital and how it is meant to network through multiple systems. What is it that made you so passionate about attacking such a massive concept and all of its little eccentricities and the mosaic that it is, and say, you know what, the whole system's got to go. How do we replace the system? Where did you get to personally before we went this direction?
Uh, Probably the pinnacle of my career, so to speak. The corner office and the millions of dollars and and the great title and the executive position and the building of companies, that everything that we were taught to dream about and to chase got me to that point in that office where uh, my conscious growth wasn't congruent with everything else that I was doing, and at the same time, the I guess the real tipping point was uh, I started spending more time with my two sons and their friends, and they had some very relevant questions that I was surprised I couldn't answer all that well,
Mm.
such as why are we paying for our food? And is this really the only model that exists, is working 50, 60 hours a week and letting your health suffer and chasing the dollar and trying to keep up to the Joneses. They they were looking for answers from me, and with all my education and experience, I couldn't give them great answers
Mhm.
based on the model that existed. And so we just decided that collectively we would share all of our perspectives and try to create new models for everything.
So they started out with some really good critical thinking skills, Dale. Kudos to you for instilling that in your sons. There's a lot
Mhm.
of young people that don't even have the questions, let alone know how to ask them and articulate them in such a way that um, the need, lead to that propelling into how can we redream this? How can we rephrase this? Can we participate in any level that makes us feel empowered? But when we're missing the critical thinking skills, we've had experts on in the past that said that's one of the first things that our kids lose in a lot of the public sector and certainly within the public school systems, even in the private school systems. There is um there is a desire to still create an ongoing level of uniformity and conformity. So that's the first start, critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
I know that your sons mentioned, and some of the other band members when they were here last year, that they'd watched some other young bands that had come onto the scene even after them move forward with their professional careers, sign contracts with some big names. But there always seemed to kind of be a payoff, or maybe a compromise that was understood and was going to be anticipated of them to look sideways when it came to how they were marketed or how they needed to change lyrics or maybe how they were meant to present themselves. It was inauthentic. Has that been another part of the process for you and your sons going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, when we look at every aspect of life, every detail of life, and from the music perspective that we're talking about right now, I mean, it's you just start asking the question, to what end? Uh, we are artists. We have something to say. We're concerned about some things, and we have some messages that we want to share.
Mhm.
Within the corporate structure of the music industry, you don't necessarily have that freedom to express yourself in that way. You might become a little noisy or a little bit of a risk to the industry, and they certainly don't want that.
Mhm.
So they've nurtured some other people and some other music that's not necessarily the authentic kind that maximizes the connection between artist and audience. So we felt immediately that authenticity was missing, and so we started to think, well, what does us making a living in the music industry, what does it look like outside of the industry? And so we just started getting creative about what if we own our own publishing? What if we own our own distribution? What other kind of online community do we need to create? How do we give this journey meaning? How do we make it so that there's a purpose greater than ourselves? How do we raise the vibrational energy of everybody around us? And those beautiful questions are on our minds all the time with everything that we do,
Mhm.
not just music wise, but in a business sense, we can ask exactly the same questions.
Mhm.
And um, and then it's not that big of a stretch once you get out of that paradigm that everybody lives in, or the masses live in. Once you step outside of there, it's actually, and you get comfortable, the answers come very, very easily.
Mhm. It really is getting curious about our world, I think at the most fundamental level, sufficient enough that when we step in to society and we look around and we go, okay, here's the way to do it. Without the curiosity, we step into someone's perception, some system's enforcement, some level of personal infringement on our creative view of the world, basically. And the curiosity dies and we conform. We step in and we start to become part of the machine. And what I'm hearing you say is to bring ourselves out of these clearly broken systems where too much power has created excessive amounts of corruption, clearly mismanagement of funds, oversight that is a joke on every level. I mean, I think that there's so much that's obvious now that is not. We have trillions of dollars missing in this country that has taken place long before our current administration. And when you sit and listen to the oversight committees and who is in charge of it, you hear this circular talk where no one is answering the questions as to where the money is gone, who's received it, who is holding the spreadsheets. It's insidious. We have to come back to that curiosity. So I love that your model, in addition to the idea of personal sovereignty, going back to natural law and understanding that we as human beings have a natural propensity to be individuated and to experience our own creative brain trust, if you will, to offer the world, that we don't just need to adapt or adopt what is there, but to actually create it and engineer or innovate it ourselves, and to bring something new into the world where clearly something new has been in desperate need of creation, and at least putting it out there to society to either buy in and jump on or reject. And so this is a radical new way of thinking. Just the thinking is radical for a lot of people. Oh, you don't just step in and go right into what has always been as we perceive it. No, the answer would be no. So we're not just dealing about it, talking about intentional community or growing your own food or writing music that doesn't conform to pop culture the way the industry wants you to be. We're really talking about everything down to how we interact with one another, how we do barter and trade. Like you said, getting into tribal business is kind of the couch term. So let's go there now. Let's talk about what tribal business means and how that is all encompassing of this larger model that we're talking about, Dale.
Sure. So, just at a fundamental level, you really have two ends of the spectrum. You have hierarchy, which exists now, and you have tribal, which has existed in forms over the last 10,000 years. But if we just look at those two differences, what exists right now is the hierarchical system that in business, that there is one boss, and then there's a couple other people that benefit from all of that, but we quickly get down to the masses where they're not mentally or emotionally engaged for the most part. They're only there to make ends meet. So there's this psychological drain. They don't have a purpose greater than themselves, and so you see a lot of symptoms come from that. This lack of purpose. So whether it's addictions or whether it's depression, and a whole line of other symptoms that tell us that absolutely something is definitely wrong. And but we have this theory that we can't just go around and bitch, or we can't go around and try to fix all of these things. We really have to get down to the heart of it. So we just got to, as simple as possible. What do we need to do first? We need to take our health back. Nothing else works if our stomach doesn't work. So we need to take our food supply back. And I have, it's actually somewhat amusing how many people get lost even on that one. Like, that is such an outside the box thought when you think about all the problems that it solves, and how we take back our power, and how our reptilian brain immediately, if we know that our food supply is taken care of for the rest of our lives in a healthy way, how much freedom that thought alone
Mhm,
gives us.
mhm,
Uh, and then you start building on those principles. So we're building our own food. Now, what else is necessary for us to be truly human again? And not in this work-life imbalance that we've all been living for the last generation or few. So we start thinking about the cornerstones of being human, which are love, health, connection, truth, purpose, freedom. So how do we create a growth environment for that? That leads to what relationships looks like. That leads to opening the conversation about how do we parent kids going forward, and how does an entire community take on that responsibility. And it goes to the growth and learning model. How do we change that? So the education system that was built for the reason of colonialism, we can easily say that that system is no longer relevant,
mhm,
and the next generations, and uh, this is something that has to be done out of necessity. This is not something that um, the you know um, we're doing for us. This is something that the next generation is going to insist on, and the generation after that is going to not even interact with you if you're not thinking this way. That's how quickly this is going. It is going to move. This is how powerful evolution is, and it doesn't matter how smart us gray-haired people are. The next generations are going to tell us how it is,
mhm.
uh, and we either choose to play and choose to listen and choose to partner with the younger generations, or we get left behind. That's truly how I see it.
Mhm.
And to put it into numbers, there's right now the U.S. reports 150 intentional communities in the United States. My bet is that there's going to be 10,000 in the next 20 years.
Mhm. Those are numbers that demonstrate a very sharp trajectory because number 1, we recognize that the systems have been, um, easily corruptible and dysfunctional for quite some time, but some nations that are a little bit more forward thinking than the United States, because we really, really like our ways of doing things here, have been able to have long standing, I mean, multiple decades of highly sustainable, intentional, spiritual, cooperative communities. Dominor is one that I've been studying and following for quite some time. I have children that have taken classes out at Esalen, that's in Big Sur, California. I just was at Dimensions of Disclosure in August, where there is a community that is out at Sunrise Ranch, and what they do is you jive and you vibrate where you are going to find the greatest connection with others based on their highest objectives. And so there is that tribal concept, isn't there, in that, Dale? But the next piece is how do we address all those that can't make it? We've got young people that cannot make it with our broken, corruptible financial systems. They can't make it on the jobs that they have. They're penalized the end of the year because they made just enough to be able to get their car payment and share an apartment with maybe 2 to 3 other kids, but penalized because they didn't have enough to get the, health insurance, and now they're part of a broken system paying in so someone else's care is taken care of while they're deprived of their care. There's simply going to be less plugging into these broken systems and a lack of participation by our youth by necessity. Do you foresee that as well?
Absolutely, it's the pain level is going to continue to get higher and higher, and is already to a tipping point where it, even if it's 5% of the market that sees this as an absolute alternative to the model that they've put in front of us over the last few generations. Um, 5% is a massive, massive market, and
Mhm,
and it's not going to take a lot to. Really, what it's going to take is some architectural drawings and a quick video to show how life can absolutely be different. We can step outside of that circle that everybody's living in very, very easily. Take our health and our power back. Give ourselves some freedom, and start surrounding ourselves with loving energy in all ways, with everything, people and sentient beings, and the earth. And there is an entirely new, different dimension of happiness that comes along with that. And once we just have a few really incredible working models of that, it's not going to take people long to start wanting to build them themselves.
Right. And you've addressed the spiritual laws and the reasons for us connecting, and certainly kind of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, making sure that some of these basic um the natural man requirements are taken care of, our food, our shelter, well-being, community. There's a financial component to this too, and I'm excited for you to talk to our audience about this. I've been a follower for a while, not only of permaculture models and biodynamic models, but also an Ubuntu movement through Michael Tillinger's um, very innovative concept of how to take ourselves off a monetary system, and it isn't quite barter and trade. And I think that we need more engaged conversations talking about how we can use resources to be able to bless and to be able to exchange in a way that's harmonious and doesn't put us back into one of these fiat currency systems. Let's go there now. Let's talk about how this tribal community also has to acknowledge that there is going to be some sort of a financial model. What does that look like, Dale?
So, if we say, 400 or 500 years from now, we're in that utopia that we want to be. If for the next 400 years, there's this transition period, I call it, where we're going to have to bridge the gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And yes, money has a certain aspect that has to be um, observed.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so really what we did was we just put a financial plan together to from 20 to 60 homes on in a sustainable environment where everybody gets together and puts in a cooperative effort. We grow our own food, and the financial sustainable part is it always works best when you also have a revenue generating business on the property. So whether that is some sort of plant-based health solution, whether that's another business like one of the businesses that we're looking at is an avocado oil plant that we can put on one of the communities. Hemp is definitely continuing to come up in Canada. The marijuana growth, especially for medicinal purposes, is a business plan that fits nicely. Uh, the property right now, the 40 acres that we're looking at in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, and we're just finalizing that deal. It has a spiritual and healing center, so they do everything from yoga to addictions counseling. It already runs out of there, and we're just taking over that business and the property, and then building the food production system and the energy production system so that it's all encompassing on that one community. But there's no one right way to do this. It's simply a math problem. I'm a finance guy. It's just a math problem. It's 40 homes times $100 is $4 million in revenue. I mean, we can make that model work
Hmm.
on most properties. The food production system costs about $400,000 to $500,000, especially an indoor aquaponic system where the nitrates from the fish fertilize the food. The science is amazing, and the permaculture scientists and designers have come so far in the design of these communities. It's so exciting to see how everybody can live together and everything on these kind of properties.
Hmm.
But the math is really, really exciting, and it changes the financial model. I know a lot of people are terrified to retire, and they use language, and this language makes me sad, but it's been normalized. I have to work for another 12 years before I can possibly even think about retiring. And that kind of language, makes me a little sad. Like, well, I think we can do better than that. I think we can create a model that changes that whole financial picture. So you don't think that you need 1 million or 3 million or 5 million to retire. Once you have your food supply taken care of, and once you're surrounded by beautiful people and you have a purpose greater than yourselves, you really start to have a hard time finding out what you're actually going to spend money on.
Right.
I don't think of very many things that I can spend money on.
It keeps coming back to that foundation of having some curiosity, whether you are a young person coming right out of the school system, or a budding millennial, to assume that going to a financial planner and asking them how much you're going to need to retire based on today's systems, on our fiat currency, on our instability with the IMF, on the instability of crypto, on the instability of government is insanity. You have no idea what it's going to take for you to retire, and you don't even know what retirement means in this evolving society. We have to ask bigger questions. And
Mhm.
I don't mind being bold and saying, if we don't start asking the questions of who is in debt, what is this debt, when we've got, those within our own governments, those within Congress, those that have had financial oversight that have lost trillions of dollars, but somehow the common man, the taxpayer, owes some hierarchy of central banks, ultimately owned by very, very, very super uber wealthy individuals and elites, if you were to pay any attention. Who do we really owe, and do we really owe it, and do we even want to participate in this game and this shenanigan anymore? There's going to be a degree of waking up, and degree of perhaps even civil disobedience. I'm just not going to participate in this system anymore. It's broken. It's corrupt. It's all corporatized. It doesn't honor me as a citizen. It sees me as an asset and as a slave asset, and my children and grandchildren to continue behind me. I'm just not going to participate anymore. So a bit of cueing in to literally how freight train runaway our systems have become is kind of an important reason, and I think a faculty to be able to come full circle to see why what you're doing isn't so radical, Dale. It isn't such a far-fetched, oh yeah, maybe 3, 5 generations from now. We're here. Haven't we really arrived with this becoming an enormous opportunity to launch our societies in a way that isn't going to create debt slaves out of our children?
Well, with all my heart say absolutely. And as you brought up the political landscape, um, I continue to just think about how irrelevant that conversation becomes once you do the necessary reading to understand that the system is the system. The system is not leading us in the direction that's best for us,
Mhm.
and the system, it doesn't have our best interests in mind. So what utility is the system really going to have over the next few generations? Um, and I think the system has prepared themselves very well for how to handle people who resist the system. But I don't know if they're equipped on um, a whole bunch of people abandoning the system. If
Right.
they just walk away, I don't think they have a defense for that.
It's
Uh,
codependent on our participation, absolutely, and I
yeah.
mean, just, I don't mean to take this in an avenue that's unnecessary, but most, young people, when they enter the workforce, don't realize that the IRS, is a private corporation. It is not a federal organization. It is privatized, and it requires your willingness to participate in the tax system. A lot of
Mm.
young people don't know that, and yes, it's very good at getting you to be complicit with that, but there is language that a lot of us are uninformed about, and as we sharpen into realizing, oh, once I buy into the system, it's much harder to unplug. How much do I really want to continue to participate? How much is this really going to ultimately provide the return on investment for my life force and the precious singular life that I'm leading right now and that of my children? And so, yes, all of these things need to be examined. So the financial model, just to get back to what you were saying, is not a singular financial model. For conscious capital, there is an understanding that you need to bloom where you're planted. If you have one of these communities, if you have land in Canada, it's going to have a different crop. It's going to have a different trajectory and model than Southern California, than where I am in North Carolina, down in South America, assuming this continues to go global. Is there some sort of template that helps our audience understand that you go through the motions of finding out what is viable for the region of the world that you're in, and the other participants that are looking at regions of the world that you're interested in participating in? How does that work exactly?
So there, so we're open to building these communities all over the world, and so we haven't. We're really just looking for the friendliest governments. Again, I said that I don't find much utility in the government anymore. In fact, in the building of these solutions, the government plays one role, which is barrier or it's really the hardest part of what we do. But to your question, um, there isn't one right way to do this. The template is a piece of land, 40 to 100 willing and able participants or buyers, a food production system and an energy production system, and and the tribal plan. And outside of that, um, we the first part of the process is we actually take a virtual reality 3D mapping of the entire property. That shows what plants, what soil, what trees, all everything that's indigenous to the area. It takes into consideration the precipitation and everything. As I said, the science in permaculture society is absolutely incredible. They know everything down to the bugs and the pests and the food supply of the animals around there, and how everything is symbiotic. It's a beautiful process from start to finish,
Mhm.
and it takes an open mind, and uh, a clean canvas for which we build a beautiful piece of art, and every single one of them I see as being somewhat unique.
Mhm. Great. I wanna open up the lines now that we're, halfway through our regular segment time, and it's 919-518-9773 if we have any callers that are interested in engaging in this topic. This is a topic that I think, is, as you've said, going to multiply, exponentially and lead to so much more innovation and, community building globally, so we need to have the conversations. I think that some of the things that make people afraid is that they're going to be at the leading edge of thinking differently. And I don't think that enough of our audience, I certainly don't think enough of the global audience knows we have been proving the principle of sustainable and intentional community for decades and decades and decades. We have looked at existing commodified agricultural models and compared them to organics with an understanding to a biodynamic and sentient respect for life and permaculture, and come out way ahead with these organic models such as the Rodale Institute. Seed saving is such an easy thing to do if you get your thinking, back in order. Does your entire yard need to be a highly fertilized and sprayed lawn with fungicides and herbicides and pesticides? Is the way that we've done it really the only way to do it if we just start to take a little bit of power back, one conversation at a time? So now, if you're going to be the spokesperson that you were in the video, and I really, really love how effortlessly you explained that to the neophyte, this is the way of the future. This is what's coming. How do you start the conversation with people, Dale, when you want to introduce them the idea that this is a whole other way to build an investment for themselves, for their family, their children, their grandchildren? Where do you start with that conversation?
The one underlying principle is that return on investment alone, profits alone. Um, I, any of us can do that. It's not good enough anymore. And community responsibility and return on investment are not mutually exclusive. So, our responsibility as leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, whatever we are, our responsibility is to just create models that have return on investment and community responsibility. They have a benefit greater than just making profits, and they have a benefit greater than just accumulating for our own personal wealth. We know that's a soulless journey, and of course, not everybody agrees with us. Not everybody's ready for it. And my own father has such cognitive dissonance on the whole growing of the food thing, because he was that guy that worked uh, really, really hard his entire life and didn't call in one day sick his entire life. He's very proud of that. We're not here to undermine that. We're just saying it's okay that that was the model that they gave you. You did well, but there's a different model coming around that makes a lot more sense and a lot better sense for most people.
Mhm.
And we're not saying anybody was wrong. We're just saying that we think we have this better way, and
Right.
uh, and everybody's going to feel better for it.
Exactly. And that's really the difference between being solutions based, or my favorite term is solutionary, as opposed to revolutionary. We don't need to cut everything at its ankles and tell everyone that pre-existing model was wrong, or that the way that they've envisioned it is a skewed perception. If it's still serving them sufficiently, this is a cooperative effort. This is not so narrow in its view that everyone needs to jump in and participate and see it. It's not dogma. Is kind of what I'm looking to say. It's solutions based. If you can even see that there's a problem. If you don't see that there's a problem, then it's not a solution for you. So I want to talk about what you're looking at next with those that are you're seeking to participate. Are we talking about people that have land and they don't know what to do with it? Are we talking about philanthropists that want to be part of a big investment and get things going? Or are we talking about just somebody's got some money from a Roth IRA and they're wondering how they can create a little security for themselves? Where are you kind of pivoting to get
Mhm.
participation at this point, Dale?
Well, if you just kept going for another 5 minutes and named 20 other instances where someone might be interested in what we're talking about, I would say yes to all of them. Um, there are people with land that they definitely want to give us. Um, there are people who just want to be involved because they've been detached. They haven't been connected to a loving group of people for a long time. There's a lot of lonely people out there, let's just use that word, that are looking for a connection or looking for a common purpose with some other people. We're open to investors. Again, I created some models that uh, we're very competitive on return on investment. Our competitive advantage, as the video says, is that we're also creating a vibrationally energetic, high environment.
Mhm.
We have soul profit as well. And again, we can build very healthy returns on people's capital and have some incredible benefit for a lot of people. To bring those models to bring people together to live a healthier lifestyle just feels really, really good. And there's tons of opportunity in the construction business, to the design business, to um, and buying land, for instance. I love that long term uh, business strategy as well, especially rural land. Let's buy some trees and let's buy some soil. Let's buy some land. Let's buy thousands and thousands of acres. Let's take the McDonald's strategy, which isn't a restaurant, they're a real estate company. Let's take that same strategy, but buy rainforests and buy fertile land all over the world, and so that it can't be developed, it can't be um,
Exploited.
forest.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
can't be exploited. So we're going to throw a lot of darts. We're going to be in the nonprofit. Well, we are in the nonprofit space. I I don't love the space necessarily because I think most charities are band-aid solutions to systemic problems, and I'd rather just solve the systemic problem or create a new model for it. I would
Mhm.
I'd actually rather say now. Um, but there's still utility in nonprofit organizations because there's very sophisticated plan giving programs and people leaving money in their last will and testament, and so uh, we might as well go after that market as well. Straight investors that want to make 8% or more on their money, we have a great model for that. People who just want to buy one of the tiny homes for $100,000 or less, which is really the metaphorical and the literal price of most of these investments, because we want to stop the financial slavery and change the model for most people. Um, uh, we're looking for just about everybody. We're looking for great business people, because the only thing that's limiting our growth are actually really good people who want to join us and start doing some research and finding some partners and finding some pieces of land. And I mean, we could have 20 of these projects going on at once if we had the right number of people.
Mhm.
So we are. This is a cooperative project. This is a tribal project. We're sharing it with everybody. It feels beautiful. I do have to say too. Um, I love the youth. I love the evolution that they've already gone through. Their new way of thinking. This is not a stretch at all. And like I said, the generation after that is going to be. Of course, we're growing our own food. I don't know how you could do it any other way. But I've hired a 27-year-old lady and a 26-year-old man as co-presidents of the community development company, um, because we also believe in the balance between masculine and feminine energy, which has been missing, especially from the business world, but has been missing from the entire world for a long time, and leads to a lot of the problems. So I named them co-presidents. I don't know if that's the first time anybody's ever named a man and a woman co-president or not, but again, we're not paralyzed by any assumptions or models or anything. If we can think it and we can dream it and we can't poke a whole bunch of logical holes in it, then we're going to try it. We're going to do it. So we're pretty fearless about that, and so we're really proud about that community development project. The co-presidents that are passionately going after it and dealing with the new mayors. There's a couple new mayors that got elected in Canada. One of the guys I think was 25 years old. I mean, this new generation is coming,
Yeah.
and with a lot of passion.
Yeah, they have a lot of strength, conviction, dissatisfaction, and a voice that's getting bolder. And speaking of that, we've got someone in the queue that's got a question. I'm going to have Amnon just go ahead and read that. I think it is for both of us. What have you got for us, Amnon?
It says, I'm trying to envision this. How would you handle sewage and water removal? What about medical facilities?
Okay, so I know you probably have an answer for that, Dale. When you talk about this tribal model, obviously there is so much to do with utility, literally, in running communities. Is all of this kind of built into the template that you have at this point?
Yeah, like I said, the permaculture scientists are so advanced in everything. The human sewage, there's such an easy, seamless way to use that to fertilize and to keep the circle of life, that symbiotic relationship that humans should have with the earth. Those are really, really easy, fundamental parts of the permaculture design. The water thing is a really, really good one. I mean, that's at the very top of our priority list. Is a really good well or a really good artesian uh, stream that's running under the land. I mean, that's a big part of it, and water is a big part of our life, obviously, and our sustainability. So we that's one of the big important priorities we have when we're choosing a piece of land, is what kind of clean water supply they have.
Mhm.
And the biggest barrier that most people have is healthcare. And so I have a couple answers for that. First of all, um, uh, I find it a little ironic that we're worried about going and changing the model and going to live from suburbia to a sustainable community, and we're worried about what happens to our healthcare, but we're not worried so much in the continuous uh, poisoning of our food supply.
Mhm.
um, which seems to me like the first priority would be to get off of that food supply so we take our health back, and then healthcare is not necessarily the high as high on our priority list as just our health in general.
Mhm.
um, Healthcare looks a lot different in my world. um, when you have tribes all over the place, and then you have a network of tribes, or a tribe of tribes, let's call it. You have services and products that you continuously trade. And health services, whether it's a doctor or a nurse, they would obviously be part of the sustainable plan. We need healthcare professionals. We don't see it presented in the way that it is right now. We see 90 to 95% of all ailments and sicknesses and going away as soon as we take our food supply back.
Mhm.
So it's quite a bit of a less um, of an issue than maybe it is now, with all the sickness and all the conditions that we're all suffering from. Most of them go away when we take our food supply back.
Right. When we're talking about sick management or pain management, which a lot of our healthcare happens to be, we've got people with chronic conditions. What I'm hearing you say is if we spearhead wellness, if we spearhead regenerative systems, if we get off of the 9 to 5, never take a sick day because you can't afford to take a sick day or you need to save up that PTO, whatever it is, it changes the whole conversation. It changes the whole way with which we get up every single day and live and breathe and contribute to that tribal community. So it makes sense to me. Will there be times with which you may need something outside the system? Yes, and it sounds like the communities will pivot and they'll innovate more when when that arises. But there's a pretty strong template so far to be looking at it from a large purview and being able to say, here's the systems that currently exist, here's where they're broken, here's a replacement for it, based on your models, right, Dale?
Yes, absolutely. And again, the healthcare one always continues to come up. There's one of the writers that I've been having some fun reading, Daniel Quinn. He either said or quoted this airplane, this civilization airplane, has been going down. It's been in the air for 10,000 years, but it's been going down. And when you're in a plane and someone offers you a parachute, you don't ask to look for the warranty, or you don't ask for the details of the warranty, right? You just take the parachute and get off the plane, and
Mhm.
then worry about what happens after that, kind of thing, right? And I kind of see it that way. I mean, there's what right now is what we're dreaming about. The hows, sometimes you have to jump and sort of learn how to fly on the way down. And some of those hows will be answered very, very simply. The healthcare one is an easy one in my mind, because again, 95% of the all ailments go away as soon as we take our food supply back. And there are doctors and nurses around that don't believe in the healthcare system as it is,
Mhm.
and don't want to be part of it anymore, and would love to be part of these communities and offer their services in a cooperative way in the tribe or the tribe of tribes. It's I don't. I'm sure we've climbed much bigger mountains.
Yes. And like we've said, if you look at the overall view of global intentional communities that have innovated maybe in their own unique way and in a proprietary way perhaps, that have already been succeeding for decades now, you will see how they made very specific accommodations for where they were in the country, how many people they allow into that group. Is it all adults? Are there children? Are there families? Do they grow crops? Do they come together with your cumulative services? There needs to be some individuation. This isn't a one size fit all, Dale. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Well, in fact, that's the fun part, really. I mean, if we wanted to build a community that was going to help people with PTSD, for instance, we wouldn't just build a community and build 50 homes and then put 50 people with PTSD in the community. And we we're having fun creating these new solutions, and that's why we say it's such an amazing co-creation. It's and we get to put our artistry at work. Is what does a community look like? What kind of energy does it need? Um, how many young people, how many middle-aged people, how many elders, how are we all interacting and learning together? All those beautiful energies that we can be conscious of just make it a lot of fun to create this vision. um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm not worried if we don't have all the answers right now. um, what I'm very happy about is the first one. If we make mistakes on 50% of the details, it's still going to be um, a hell of a lot happier place than the one that exists for most people right now.
Well, I love that you're also covering the emotional well-being and the spiritual health of the community. There is a really good literature out there and great studies that have been done on blue zones, and I'm assuming that maybe that's something that's crossed your path already in doing
Mm.
some of your due diligence and research. Maybe a lot of our audience doesn't know this, but please Google it. Take a look at blue zones. There are areas of this world that have been um, so strikingly, contrastingly healthy and vital and regenerative, and the the age of those that are still living in the community well into their latter years, into their retirement years, that are in full health and vitality and are still very active in relationships and in the community and in some of the recreation that goes on there. The amount of diseases that attack these families that live within the communities, how they manage their finances, so their financial health is factored in. Their overall emotional well-being and emotional health is factored in. And I don't know why they came up with blue zones rather than green zones, because that's the first thought that comes to me. But when I was studying it, I don't know, half a decade ago, and some of the studies came out, I remember thinking there are several elements that they managed to take care of, to contain within these communities, to make sure that it wasn't just that there was food, that there was a roof over their head, or that they were even somewhat segregated from the rest of society. These communities cared about each other having, as you stated, those beautiful virtues, but also purpose. Every individual in the community had purpose. No one was expendable. We didn't tuck our elderly away in some retirement home. Everyone got involved and felt like they were an integral part. And it has become painfully, acutely, um, in my current view of understanding and having to take an inventory of what it means to not have purpose or not to feel that you have purpose in recent personal events that I have gone through, and now coming to understand that someone in this country commits suicide every 16 seconds. There are too many people in our society, too many people that do not feel purposeful, that do not feel valuable, that do not feel like they have a place with which they are lovingly, compassionately engaged and in demand, and then are being fulfilled through that. And so I'm seeing that these communities are answering to that larger question too. What is your role in this world? How are you feeling that you have a contribution? How can you express that contribution rather than just being grist and a slave for this financial mill? Just trying to make ends meet. Come together with community and we lighten one another's burdens.
Yes, absolutely, and that is the way of the future. And obviously, it's very relevant. And the youth are screaming, and it seems to me a lot of the dogma is, um, they're entitled, they're lazy. Uh, because they're asking those questions. They're resisting jumping on that treadmill because they already see that that they've evolved and that's no longer going to work for them. But they continuously get judged and criticized for not fitting in properly. And I am so passionately looking to create the models that eases a lot of this pain, especially from the youth. I
Mhm.
think that anybody over 40 who has accumulated a few $100,000 or more, they're not necessarily going to groove with all of this vision, because they're already in protection mode. They're already protecting what they've accumulated, and they believe that their survival is dependent on that particular amount of money that's sitting in their bank account or in the real estate that they own. So they're stuck. They're paralyzed maybe by fear, or and again, maybe it's the reptilian brain that keeps us there. I think that the system or the establishment knows that and does a very good job of keeping us stuck there.
Mhm.
But the youth aren't, they're not stuck there. The youth are saying, well, what happens if I don't want to join that model? What does it look for me? And that's, it's really, this is about the youth. This is about the next generation. We truly owe it to them to give them a better model so that they're not sad, they're not lost, they're not depressed,
Mhm.
and they're not doing that ultimate action, which is signing out because they don't see how they fit in.
Mhm.
And and, and you know, I don't want to play the blame game. I just want to create solutions. That's all.
Yeah. We had someone in the queue make a comment, and it's something I'm familiar with, having lived in Jerusalem for 6 months and over in the Middle East. It sounds like a kibbutz. You
It
know,
would.
this
Or,
is not such a radical idea from what has been, is it, Dale?
well,
It's not.
well, in fact, I mean, we could study just anthropology, and over the last 10,000 years, we can see different civilizations have come and gone. Tribalism is the only one that's been around nonstop all the time. And it's not just for humans, there's packs of wolves, pods of whales. I mean, that the cooperative model exists everywhere around us.
Yes.
The reason why people don't live it is because the people that own most of the wealth and have most of the power, it doesn't serve them.
Hmm.
And again, and there's a part of me that just that very vehemently does not want to continue to serve them. And so
Civil disobedience in a hierarchical order. I mean, it's honestly the most benevolent thing you can do for you and everyone around you is to say, let's stop participating. We
that's really
don't have to do it. This is sovereignty. This is natural law. This is natural man. I don't want to make you ultra, 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 ultra wealthy at the detriment of society, myself, my children, and those that I will never meet. I'm choosing not to participate in your system. And it's really that simple, isn't it, Dale, when you look at the nuts and bolts level?
it it's not only that simple, but when it is that simple and that clear, Tatiana, I really have a hard time investing 1 second of emotion in any kind of left right political debate, knowing that that is the system that has been continuously disserving us for generations.
Mhm.
It's not one or the other. It's and I feel, again, I feel a little bit sad for those people that are passionately one way or the other, because they're constantly disappointed. They're constantly putting stock in, when this side wins, my life is somehow going to be better.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of the government. I don't know if that's ever happened.
Yeah.
And so I wonder what precedent people are using that are willing to give up relationships or everything else in this left right debate, um, when there's no citing of any proof whatsoever in the last 50 years that a Democrat or a Republican government made anyone's life better
Mhm.
after an election. I haven't seen it. There's no proof there at all.
At least
So
not in any way that's sustainable and can be counted upon, right? Even if there's short-term gains, tax cuts here or there, when we're really talking about the wealth of nations, when we're talking about the betterment of society and the empowerment of the people? No. The answer is no. So I say natural law because that's come up a lot in some of the circles that I dance in. I've gotten back out of common law to get to why we even have adopted as a nation, as a westernized society, some of the mechanisms around government and governance. And once we reclaim our sovereignty and go back to just basic youthful curiosity, we
Mhm.
realize there is nothing that is mandatory. There is nothing that is so deep and so entrenched that we need to buy into it hook, line, and sinker. We can reinnovate it at any time. And the founding fathers of this country actually organized this country in such a way and built into its constitution that if its governments become corrupt, we are to dissemble and release and thereby uh, take the powers back and create a new governing body. And if that means no governing body and we start working with other natural principles, so be it. But let's at least start with we have choices. And I love that that's what you brought to the table. I know there's so much more detail we could have gotten into. I'm going to throw it up to one other person in case they want to call 919-518-9773, because the last thing that I want to ask is how has the music deepened when you work with Daring Greatly and other young artists and other young brilliant millennial minds that are thinking differently? I know you do a lot of traveling and tours with people that think very similar to you and that they bring a rich tapestry to this conversation.
Mm.
How has this added to the bigger view of what the potential is that this world has to offer us? How does it create this whole new place of hopefulness, and how has it touched the music?
Um, we we give meaning to everything we do, the message, the music, the performance. We feel the great responsibility and great privilege every time we're in front of people, that our responsibility is to inspire and to raise the vibrational energy of everybody there and give everybody just 3 or 5 seconds of attention. um, I would do want to say one more thing. We've partnered with a group called Music House, and we are going to change the music industry. We see a vision where everybody stays independent. We don't need a music industry anymore. We're building an online community with an app where everybody stays independent and it's resource based. So there's education, there's tools for managing your business. This app is going to make it so that if people want to make a living doing what they absolutely love, which is creating art or music in some kind of way, we can enable that, um, and bring authentic art back, and bring authentic artists back to the audience, so that it's not bought and paid for, made for radio, formulaic stuff that is at a very low frequency and is not serving the purpose that music is here to serve. So we're really excited. We're launching that on January 16th. And we truly think that artists are going to take back the art.
Oh, how exciting. I am
Yeah.
so exhilarated to hear that. Thank you for putting that out to our audience. I think that that's going to bring a
Mhm.
whole other element of hopefulness to this conversation. We
Yeah.
want to direct them to Conscious Capital and this entire movement. Tell our folks where to go in terms of websites and resources.
Sure. So www.consciouscapgroup.com is the Conscious Capital. That's the financial funnel for which we support all other uh, business innovations that are thinking outside the box and have a different business model and have a different vision outside of the one that exists. So and again, investors, people who want to participate, other visionaries. This is not mine. This is ours,
Yeah.
and it's right. Uh, we could be 1 billion strong sometime, and we have a 500-year vision. So we're not in this mad panic or anything. It's a beautiful journey that we all get to co-create, and not a competitive environment, but a cooperative one.
Absolutely. Well, that is the natural order as well. A house divided against itself cannot stand. A body, cellular intelligence divided against itself. It is a cooperative element all the way down from microbial life and cellular life all up into the higher order. It's where we got skewed in human order that took us off this idea of singularity and oneness to duality and competition. And it's a lie, and we're done. I
Yep.
just want to throw out to our folks, Dale. We don't have to know how to do everything. And I certainly don't. I have some talents in permaculture. I've run a home on an Airbnb before very successfully. I have people around me with amazing talents. And for me, it makes perfect sense. I love CBD. I love industrial hemp. I love what we're doing with cleaning up the planet with this amazing plant. There are, hemp pilot programs all over this country. Find someone and plug yourself in. I am looking at working with others that have land. For others, they're like, yeah, I don't want to be a farmer. And I'm like, well, let's put in a treehouse community. We're surrounded with gorgeous hardwoods here in North Carolina. Obviously, innovate where you are. But for us, who doesn't want a treehouse? I'm 49. I want a treehouse. I'm ready for my treehouse. We
Oh,
can
yeah.
rent these. They are the most in-demand rental in the world, and they go for rates that are insane because everyone's got a little kid in them who
Love
wants
it.
to hang out for a weekend in a treehouse with their sweetie or their family. And so when we really start to get back to the playful and the innocence about what we want, if we aren't so hard-edged on that 9 to 5, and we start to redream a future where that young curiosity comes out, that playful whimsy comes out, we realized that there were so many other ways we could be doing it, networking with others. So I want to kudos to you for the way that you have brought the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, as well as all the physical and physiological needs into this greater vision for everyone to see. And Dale, thanks for coming on and sharing this vision. It's really been an exciting thing to chat with you about tonight.
Always my pleasure, and we love you a lot, Tatiana. So anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to keep following that, and we will have the video uploaded again to the site and also to some of our social media because I think this YouTube video needs to go viral, Dale, and I am happy to support you in that taking place. This is how we do it with community. And I want to
Absolutely.
say to our Solutionary TV community, the truth of the matter is I care so much about you. There is never a question that if I have got content, if I've got a guest, if we've got a brilliant idea, if something has happened that I believe is relevant, I'm paying to be here for you. I fund being here for you. This is not for me, it's for you. And if you ever feel engaged and naturally entrained to give back to this community, please know whether you support us through Patreon, whether you come on as a sponsor, everything you're doing forwards a vision and a voice for the rest of the world because it helps us continue and it helps us expand that message and grow our community. We can't do it by ourselves. I
Mm.
can't do it by myself. I don't even want to try. I love immersing myself in brilliant minds and being able to bring them for you through this platform to you. So thank you for your support, all of you that are inclined, because together and only together, we all are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.